Welcome to Board Ghost, story broadcast with games as the engine.
If living is a highway, then heaven is a bus stop. Been waiting for a minute there, or has it been forever? 'Cause dying don't agree with me.
We believe you're out there, hungry for stories for shared experience. We can't see you, can't hear you, yet we will play for you. This night's offering is The Skeletons. To learn how we generate stories playing the game of Skeletons, go check out our Skeletons Rule Primer. Our humble players, myself, John Holt, with me.
Ken Breese.
Kelsey Dionne.
All right, welcome back, Kelsey.
Yay,
All
Kelsey.
right. Cool, so we're going to be playing Skeletons. I will randomly distribute our 3 skeletons.
For a very targeted session of
A little
skeletons.
bit, yeah. So we're going to work together to sketch the outlines of the tomb, and it's going to be a general shape and size, built around a central sarcophagus with a north, south, east, and west wall.
Mhm.
We can make the tomb visually interesting, but we don't have to. We shouldn't add any elaborate details. It's going to big sheet of paper,
Mhm.
and yeah, then we'll kind of show on the map where our skeletons hang, and that'll be it. And then we'll kind of talk about, I think we'll do the same thing where
Yeah.
we rotate roles.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we can kind of start with our concept,
Yeah,
or we
let's
start
the
answering
concept.
our question.
Yeah, our concept. What's the where
So,
is our
I'm kind of
tomb?
pitching an abandoned like factory, like child's toy factory up in a frozen
I
northern
love it.
area.
Yes. Yeah. And so is it like wooden children's toys or
All different kinds.
all
Yeah.
different times? So it's
I mean,
like
it's just-
assembly lines, shut down assembly lines.
Yeah, like in miniature.
Miniature in
Yes.
miniature, exactly.
Not too tiny, but like
but
almost like
but
children work.
children, yeah,
Oh,
children worked.
wow.
It's in the far north. It's snowy.
Yeah.
Might even be near a pole.
Perhaps
Possibly.
that far north.
It is pretty far north.
It's starting to gear up this
Yeah,
time of year.
yeah.
You know?
Sort of like an assembly factory line. Got it.
Yeah.
Love it.
There's a manufacturing hub
Abandoned.
just sort of out in the middle of a frozen
Mhm,
waste.
mhm.
Oh man,
Abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
what could have happened?
I don't know. I don't know.
So-
But that's the tomb.
That'll be our. So we have like a tomb.
I'd love
that's,
it.
That's like the main tomb, and
We-
then we have our sarcophagus in there.
Yeah, we haven't really ever had like multi-story tombs. Does this factory have multiple levels or just one gigantic?
I think it can sprawl. It can
It
be
can
sort of.
sprawl
It's
a
got
bit.
plenty of room.
Yeah, it's got
to-
lots of
Yeah.
room. I
It
love
surely
it.
has storage places.
And because it snows, there might be like some like subterranean tunnels that connect it to other structures.
Definitely.
Ooh, that's very Twin Cities.
Definitely, yeah.
Um,
Subterranean structures. The heart of the tomb is where the sarcophagus is, where ostensibly the entity that we as skeletons will be
Right.
protecting and that we are bound to. So it's a pretty important part of all of this, right?
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
kind of picturing like a big red sack.
I love it. That makes
Ooh.
perfect sense. So that's the outer sarcophagus, is the big red sack.
Yeah.
And the big red sack is
And it's
almost
bound by a golden cord.
exactly like a golden
Uh-huh.
cord at the top of it. So you'd have to like reach up and pull the golden cord to release the red
Mhm.
sack or whatever is inside of it. I love it. And so there are also these, not like columns, but they are been carved to look like these very branchy trees, I
that
think.
line that-
Ooh.
Yeah, so that's our sort of lining it as well. We were talking about how the assembly lines sort of child-sized. Does that mean that everything else is child-sized too? Are like the halls child-sized?
some of them
Mhm.
are like vast and
Got it,
massive. It
got it.
seems like
Mhm.
the ceilings are still pretty high.
Okay,
Mhm.
Maybe
cool.
like these like
Yeah.
like old massive timber
Right.
kind of.
Yeah.
It's like a great hall, like a long hall,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a Viking long hall, but then with little like benches and conveyors and
I think
pipes.
there's definitely like kind of like a loading bay that's probably got very big double doors.
Loading bay.
And it's like big
That's
enough
sort of the
that you can.
entrance.
Yeah.
Why don't we go around kind of answering these questions?
I am the horror, and I was assembled or summoned by an unstable mind and made real. So my first question, answer this as you create the map together. What subtle things in this place speak to a purpose far, far beyond honoring the noble dead? So what is beyond honoring the noble dead in this place? Well, I think this place served a purpose. I don't think that we were the primary purpose of this place.
No.
I don't think
No.
so.
So what are like what's a visual signifier of that? Like in the spot, like what kind of?
Well, I think that the spot served another purpose such that there are definitely huge conveyor belts. I think leading around the whole perimeter of the room. Oh, my pen might not be. There's this huge, like almost like mousetrap style, like pulley system
There
of
you go.
various levels of heights and weird triggers. Like there's like one little basket bird's nest right here that falls to hit a little
Mhm,
lever right
mhm.
here.
If you look at it and stare at it long enough, it actually makes sense where you could see like how some product could be built.
And it gets down that path in an unconventional and slightly whimsical way.
Do you have any like visual things on you that it asks you to write or draw?
Oh, so I carry no weapon. I am a weapon, but I was adorned with jewelry. On my skull, I have these weird like circular metal ports, and they actually shoot out these big blasts of like multicolored light. They're used to disorient or dazzle.
So the deer, I'm a deer skeleton.
That's so cool.
In life, you must have been splendid. Your horns are banded in gold, your hooves adorned with precious stones, and a crumbling ceremonial vestment is draped across your back. And so I'm sketching those out, these sort of sparkling hooves. And
Yeah.
the question is, what special place was made for you, an animal so unlike the others, and note your answer on the map. So I'm going to note that built along like the walls here curve up,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? Like almost like we're inside of a big cylinder a little bit.
Yeah.
And along the walls on this side, almost at a preposterous angle, are a series of stables that run up along the length of the wall.
Ooh.
And there are pulleys and things that bring hay
Yes, of course. Running up the
that
wall.
run up the wall.
Exactly.
Wow.
My character's name is Big Head. I have tarnished silver tiara, crown, circlet that is around my bulbous, huge head. The top of my bulbous head only reaches maybe the top of the deer's back hips. Like I'm very short. Like it almost looks like I'm of a size that I could have worked some of these conveyor belts and child-sized factory equipment here. Circular, sort of silvery tiara that looks like holly leaves, almost like a wreath or something like that, possibly. And then there's sort of like a moth-bitten, faded colored, dark colored hood or cap that's sort of attached to this tarnished silver, but it's been eaten away by time. It has a little pom-pom at the top of sort of the hood, but again, eaten away by time. The other thing that I'm wearing is a amulet that is a strange symbol of some forgotten meaning. It's bronze. It's hanging around my neck. The amulet seems to be similar to the trees that are made of stone that are lining the sarcophagus that's wrapped in the big red sack.
Conical,
Ooh.
Yeah,
spiny
it is.
trees.
Yes, the conical spiny tree, exactly. And then the question is, what offerings were left to assist in the journey to the next world? Note your answer on the map. In the chamber adjacent to our sort of sarcophagus chamber, it's like a treasure room or a gift room, but that's basically what it is. It's just piles of brightly colored packages with bows on them. Just tons and tons of these packages, like mountains of them in this room. The room is adjacent, of course, to our sarcophagus room, but there are just these, again, mountains of brightly colored packages, papered packages that have bows on them. They're just mountains of them. Who knows what's inside of them? Anything and everything you might need to ease your journey to the next world.
Also, where are you guys on the map?
Oh
the
yeah,
other
we
thing to note.
didn't really talk about that, did we?
Oh.
Where do you guys?
Big Head is near this assembly line
The deer is going to be over here, in the stables.
in the stable.
And I think the horror is going to be trawling amongst the conveyor belts looking for detritus.
And I think I'll start off
Cool.
with the thing. So, and we're also noting to players that we're using the Echoes of War variant. That's also in the book. Is written by Sarah Williamson.
Rise!
And
Protect the tomb, skeletal guardians!
Filtering through the slats, there's this burrowing sound. It's the first thing that comes to your consciousness and you awaken. And squeezing themselves through these, like impossibly, through these little cracks, plop these plump, winged things. Maybe humanoid, but just kind of these like balls of gummy substance with wings and little mouths. And they begin to swarm out as they sort of widen this entrance for themselves, and snow filters in behind them to fill in where they came in. And they begin buzzing and swarming about and moving in a little bit of a cloud. These plump, sugary fairies. They're going to be coming in like over from the ceiling.
All right.
Over.
So noticing that they're coming in, but not able to see them yet, Big Head is going to say, "Don't let them eat the bag. Protect the bag." Big Head starts running on bony, tiny, bow-legged legs. His head like a huge baby, like rocking back and forth, trying to keep upright, having a very difficult time as the metal of his amulet sort of slaps against the bone of his rib cage, and he moves towards that area.
The cloud begins to filter over the horror's head and make its way towards the chamber of gifts, packages.
Well, the horror is coming out of this who knows how long sleep, and it has these two yo-yos that it wields as kind of weapons, and it's collected these and it's modified them to be more useful. So it starts to drift towards the central, most important package, flinging these yo-yos around, trying to make sure nothing draws close. Doing some like around the worlds, double around the worlds. And it's watching because it doesn't really care so much about those presents. It just cares about this central bag.
Okay. Your compulsion to protect the tomb, the thing that awakens you, draws your eyes as they start to again swarm these presents, and you see them kind of dart in and come up holding these like long red, like almost like floppy feet looking thing with gold and red trim and little like leaves and red flowers adorning them. And they start just as a group, like a handful of them will lift a bunch into like one of these stockings into the air and start chewing on it and devouring it.
Big Head sort of is following the swarm now, at the tail end of them, tumbling and stumbling behind them, looking at the horror and saying, "We must get them out! We must get them out! They are naughty, naughty, naughty!"
Naughty. That piques my interest.
I trip over some presents, land on some with my big head.
With a sugary sort of fluff, they just kind of squash. As you come up, they're just like stuck to your bone, fluttering, just smashed bags of like sticky gummy.
And it's like coloring my bones and sticking to my bones. Some legs and wings sort of still twitching, sort of coming
and a number
out.
of them just kind of like flutter up into the air and flit around and then just dive back into the packages and start pulling out more of these socks to eat them.
You know, the horror likes to mete out punishment to the naughty. That is, for some reason, something that the horror remembers doing and likes doing. So it's going to start to move towards these things, wielding its yo-yos. Which one should I get, baby head?
All, get them all.
Then I will.
They're all their names will be in the book.
Say, are you naughty? And fling the yo-yo at one, top speed.
Top speed yo-yo.
Whips out like a snake tongue and probably explodes it.
Yeah, so one of them just kind of, again, splats in the air and gums up. Like as your string spools back in, it starts to like stick. It only gets about halfway re-spooled. And these things kind of flit and flutter about. And you see them like starting to procreate and like, they're
Totally.
nesting. And
I'm grabbing one of the big socks and I yank it out. And then I start grabbing them and stuffing them into the sock. I'm just trying to like stuff them further and further. It's just like this bulging sock and all their bodies are meshing together and like tumbling around in it. And it's all like a bunch of cats in a pillow cover. It's like crazy.
yeah, I
shit
mean, they
going
start
in here.
eating their way out.
Exactly,
and then,
yeah.
like, fly out like moths.
I say, bring to me the war stocking.
The war stocking, must we? I will find the war stocking.
Yeah, I turn to where it's like placed in prominently in a position of honor. The war stocking, right, of course, on the wall of where we are, the room we're in, the present room or the gift room, if you will. Or it's very similar looking to the cloth stockings that have been dispersed amongst these brightly colored packages. But this one instead is like black iron, and it has like these onyx spikes coming out of it.
I'll scramble into the room, flinging my destroyed yo-yo at one of them. And I'm going to grab it with my clawed hands, and it's very heavy. So I'm going to lift it up off the ground, and like dust and decay falls off of it. It's been sitting there for who knows how long.
Mm.
I'm going to drag the war stocking to the baby head.
Dried blood
Also known as
flakes
big
off
head.
of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you notice that with all this resistance, like some are still sort of flitting about trying to chew on dropped stockings, but some have like exited the chamber and starting to flutter around the red bag.
No, no.
No. My flashing lights on my skull flare in multicolored lighted anger at that. The red stocking, they can't touch that. The red bag. How do we wield this war stocking, big head?
Stuff them in the stocking.
We shall. And I'll start to pluck them from the air. I have long clawed fingers, cramming them in there. Doesn't it shoot fire?
I press the nose that's right on the top of the stocking of this skull that's decorating it, and it starts to light up and play some chiming music as then, yes, fire starts exploding out the top of it, like a huge chimney flamethrower. And all these gummy fairies are popping and exploding and
You just
sizzling.
raining like hot sugar
Yep.
down in this room, and it
Yeah,
all.
gooey sugars like congealing on my
Yeah.
bones.
The last of them sort of like flitters to the ground and like lands weakly at your feet.
And I totally just stomp on it.
I grind it into the ground, too. I dance upon their sugary graves,
Mm-hmm.
chanting the war chant.
You guys have defeated the sugar plum fairies. You get to each answer a question if you wish. One question.
What trophies have you collected from the intruders? Choose from among those already intruded if you are able. Know your answer on the map. Yeah, I take all of their sticky, colorful bodies and I decorate the stone, spiky trees that are around the red bag that is our sarcophagus or hides our sarcophagus. And since they're all sort of different colors, these sugar plum fairies, it definitely is giving our trees a more colorful, our stone trees, more colorful vibe. They now have the guts and viscera of exploded sugar plum fairies hanging from their stone boughs and leaves.
What by name did you earn in life that describes the fear your existence evoked? My by name was the Broken Toy Keeper.
Well, that's creepy as fuck.
I was creepy. I collected the broken toys and turned them into something that served my own purposes in protecting this place. Those who lived here before feared me.
So I'm going to choose something off the glory fades.
That's
So
right.
something the skeletons are protecting is damaged. What and how?
Well, I think the bag is damaged.
Mm-hmm.
How so?
It was definitely eaten.
It's like chewed on.
So chewed on, there's a hole in it. There's a hole
It's
in
like
the bag.
threadbare.
Yeah,
a little bit.
I think there could even just be a hole. Like there's the
Right.
beginnings of a tiny, small hole has
Yeah.
started.
And I think some like goldish glittering powder is sort of squeezing
Seeping
out. And,
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it like somehow glows internally.
Right.
Is the bag like suspended in the air? Is it like
Yeah,
hanging from the
sure.
ceiling? Yeah.
Mhm.
By like the golden thread passes. So a week is going to pass. It's going to be 10 seconds here.
Arise and protect the tomb, skeletal
skeletal
guardians. The front doors creak open as the shadow of a human oid figure can be seen. Deer, you are in the stables. Where are you right now? Or I wasn't sure where you actually ended.
I think I ended near the bag that I
It's
was.
about the same spot.
Yeah.
About the same spot, so right here.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a very good view then to sort of, I think this is more like a hallway, arched.
It ramps. It actually
It
ramps up.
Yep, it ramps up.
Mhm.
to these
Exactly.
massive doors.
Exactly, it ramps sort
There's
of.
like little tracks to
Little,
like
definitely
treads.
little tracks and treads, and maybe they actually head this way towards the stables, almost like you might store whatever they're carrying or pulling that way. It looks to everyone to be this guy who's in a uniform, maybe, or a military uniform, possibly. There's some insignia that they bear upon their shoulders. They're wearing, like, their clothes are all the same color, like this very dull grayish blue, dull bluish gray. They have a very specific hat on, which looks like it has flaps on the sides and the front, which could be pulled down to protect against the snow, to like protect your ears and your face. You would be blind probably, but you could pull them down. They seem to have some sort of large duffel bag or sack that has been strapped onto their back that they seem to be wearing, almost like a shoulder bag type thing. Very overly stuffed. You're not sure what's in there. It looks like maybe boxes, possibly flat pieces of paper that are very rigid are also sticking out of it. This human is sort of pushing their way in and saying, "Delivery! Hello? Hello?"
Do they have any light?
I think
All
they have a
right.
flashlight. They have a little
torch.
torch. Yeah, it's like a mag light, a mini mag light, so it's sort of black. And they have to like twist it on. Like, anybody home? Got some mail here for you.
The lights on my skull ignite in response to their words.
Just happy holidays. We have some season's greetings here for you.
There's a distracting clatter of bones from the stables, and actually they kind of rain down
Yeah.
over here to the floor and scatter towards his feet.
Uh-huh.
But looking, if he looks over, you can see like shining his light. It's just these sort of weird staples on the wall, with some like just bones still like gently raining a few extra.
Well, I guess I'm just going to leave maybe the mail here by the door.
I scatter the handful of jacks that I've collected. They like sprawl all around him. He's like surrounded by these
Surrounded by
sharpened
jacks.
and a few rubber balls click, 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 also just bounce off into the shadows.
What? He stumbles back as the jacks are around him and he's disoriented. He steps on them and he doesn't exactly like cut through his boots. He has like very stout winter boots on, almost as if he's very prepared to travel through such difficult terrain. He is knocked off balance as he crashes to the ground. And as he does, his sort of duffel bag pops open as all these letters and packages just spill all over the ground, mixing with the jacks.
No adults may come in.
Above his head, you just hear like a like just a gentle sort of shake of a bell. Did he maintain his torch when he?
Yeah, he
fell?
held the torch, and as he hits the ground and all the letters and packages go spilling out and popping out, his torch light cuts like the ceiling. It like cuts up basically and sort of along the walls and the ceiling.
And it passes like just like for a fraction over the skeleton of a deer standing on the ceiling.
Upside down?
Yeah. And
what does this deer look like?
it's draped in this like rotted kind of cloth, what must have been like a green and red sort of like winter blanket that still hangs draped on it. And
Yeah.
it has these gold and silver bells tied to its antlers. And you can see this because in the center of its face, at the end of its face, there's this dripping, like Icarus, red, glowing orb.
Oh, it's like
That's
pulsating.
just like rotting and like like dropping, and the sort of the light falls away
like
as it leaves.
bioluminescence type
Yeah.
shit.
Ooh.
And that starts to glow more
Yeah.
brightly and illuminate this thing in front of the
Seeing
Man.
the demon deer, he screams from the ground and sort of is trying to get up. And that's when he's wounded by the jacks, as one of them sticks into his hand and he like goes down on an elbow and is just trying to leverage himself up. This like almost prayer is being dribbling out of his mouth, like almost like a mantra that he's saying over and over and over again. Neither sleet nor snow, neither fog, no pressure. He's just like trying to like amp himself up to like try and remember his duty and remember the face of his noble order.
I'm going to step out of the shadows.
And that's when he screams, "Ah!" He's this fucking hooked horror.
Definitely my like the head lights that I have, they glow in like multiple colors, sort of like a projection of this cone looking like flora, perhaps. It's just strobing, and those all ignite. I'm gonna step over him and say, "No adults may enter here." And I just stare at him, my head cocked to the side.
He's screaming now, just totally afraid. And I think he swings his sort of the only solid thing he has in his hand, which is his torch, right at the horror's like beaked face, trying to like smash sort of the beaked face, or at least protect himself from these like war yo-yos or hooked hands or whatever the fuck is coming at him.
That's when like his swing is checked. He can't
Yeah.
seem to move. It's like the muscles in his arm, something that have been severed. And he hears these bells again, and he looks down, and there are blood-covered silver and red and gold bells on the tines of these antlers shoving right through his
That are
chest.
protruding through his chest. And it's almost like the bells had been getting in his head so deeply that he didn't even feel the pain of being impaled by the horns. It's almost like they appeared magically through his chest, and he just looks down, super surprised at them, as he basically goes into shock and just sort of like dies on the horns, like hanging like a scarecrow.
He was naughty.
Yeah, the head just lowers and the body slides off.
And so the body
and
is
the
sort
light
of
goes out.
the nose goes out. The body is here on the ground in the foyer amongst the jacks, and that's it. Everyone can answer one question if they wish.
By what by name did you earn in life that describes your greatest accomplishment? And I was the most famous reindeer of all.
Of course.
Ah, all right. And mine was, what connection do you have to those you've just killed or driven away? What memory did they evoke? It's been so long that I'm not sure why this is the purpose, but I remember adults being one of my primary enemies. Maybe it was because they weren't ever allowed to come here, or this place wasn't meant for them, but I remember driving off adults like this one that tried to step on sovereign ground.
Something the skeletons are protecting is destroyed. What is it? And what it was is it's the door, unfortunately, is that this door basically falls off because the snow, it was pushed in, and then it's so old that it just sort of topples over and, you know, just sort of like falls sort of out.
All right.
And so it sort of allows just the elements and anyone else who might want to.
Is it just sort of packed with snow again?
Yeah, it just sort of packs with snow, exactly.
I think that attack of the Sugar Plum Fairy sort of rotted the hinges, too.
Maybe, yeah. I think they've just been rotted since it's been so long.
True.
All right. A year passes. Turn off lights in 40 seconds. Arise and protect the tomb, skeletal guardians.
The door has become a point of entry for various things over the year that has gone by, but never something of this nature. At first, it's the two intertwining laughs that you hear sort of echoing from the cold outside, and as they draw closer, you start to sort of shift and feel yourselves awakening as your tomb is threatened by a presence, or in fact, two. And through the door, two breathless teenagers crash in the snow. The first one is a boy who's a bit bigger, and he pushes through the drift, and he turns back, and there's a young woman behind him. and you can see like the clouds of air, and their cheeks are rosy, and they're bound up in some snow gear that they quickly start to unravel, like the scarves. And the boy unravels his scarf and throws it on the ground and leads the girl in, and he says, "See, I told you, this is not at all a scary place. I knew that we could brave it, and this is exactly what everybody said not to do, and well, look at us, here we are, aren't we?" And they laugh at each other. Now what? They're stomping around the entrance and sort of looking around, and the girl's a bit timid, and she says, "I don't know, you know the stories about this place. I don't know if we should really be here."
Well, a year has passed since the last person entered here. A person who was bringing packages and letters. I think those packages and letters have probably mostly all rotted away. Maybe there's some specific ones left over, but they're buried in the snow at this point. What is also buried in the snow is that previous intruder's corpse, who has, not really become that desiccated or like
It's frozen.
it's frozen, exactly. So there's like a frozen corpse here that they see, first of all. Second of all, I don't even know if they noticed the skeletal reindeer on the ceiling. Probably not. But they might notice the horror, who is there as well, like almost like a statue. But definitely Big Head, who is up until this moment still been by the stone pointy trees in the main sarcophagus chamber. His big head sort of turns as all the gooey guts of the sugar plum fairies that had attacked a year and a week ago finally sort of like crack off of him. The cold had sort of like turned them into brittle pieces, and now they sort of crack off. But there are these weird sort of like brittle pieces that are sort of like sticking off his arm where he was like covered in gooey guts. And they sort of tinkle as they hit the ground.
And the boy, he says, what was that? And he turns and he looks and he's like, "Oh, God, there's probably all kinds of just critters nesting in here, don't you think? Shouldn't we go look?" And he grabs the girl's hand and starts to kind of pull her towards this central area, sort of almost without looking around, just single-mindedly. They said that there was a treasure in the middle of this place, and I think it's worth checking out. And he starts to pull her, and he's like, "Come on, let's see if it's there. Come on, don't you want to see it?" And she says, "I don't know. I don't really like it here. It's kind of creepy. Don't you think we should leave?" They don't seem to notice the skeletons. They're not really. It doesn't look like they're looking for trouble.
Well, do they have a light source or anything like that? Because it's pretty dark in here, but maybe the daylight's just streaming in. I'm not sure.
They do. They have one of those little camping handheld lanterns, like actually not a flashlight with a focused beam, but just a diffuse light. So they can't actually see into the shadows too much.
There's just like the ever so like soft tinkle of bells.
Yeah, and I
like a
think there's a
shuffling.
very soft scraping of bone on the stone as Big Head is creeping more closely out of the inner crypt and towards the entryway.
The boy says, "Well, careful not to step on anything," like as if it were the girl's fault for the sounds. She says, "I didn't. You did." She kind of looks, and he says, "Look!" And you see he's starting to he starts to lead them underneath the conveyor belt, and
You see the glow.
he sees the bag, and he's like, "Look, what is that?" And this glint of light from the lantern is just catching this goldeny reflection off of the powder that's been oozing out of the bag for the past year, and this increasing pile on the floor. He pulls her toward it, and they're both saying, "What is that? Is this what? Are you seeing this?" He says.
Yeah, I think that's when there's sort of again, like this louder, right from the direction they had come, this tinkling bell sound and like a shuffle of leather and cloth.
Bow-leggedly walking out of that inner crypt, getting in front of the golden light so it sort of shines behind him, is this tiny figure of Big Head, and he has the war stocking in his hands it's all spiked and has a skull on it, and he's holding it in one hand, and he's saying, "Season's greetings," to the teenagers as he's coming out of the inner crypt and heading right towards them.
The girl screams, and she kind of falls to her knees, and the boy loses his nerve. He lets go of her hand, and he jumps back, and he's like, "Who are you?" And he jumps back and starts to run back in the direction that the sounds were coming from. And
maybe hypnotizing almost. There's like a sparkling, like mid-air, like almost like right in his line of sight is this like just catching the lantern light that he swings is this glinting, sort of sparkling, like multicolored, like sparks and glints in the just a couple arms length away from him.
Well, he starts to charge back toward the door, leaving the girl behind as this whole thing is happening. This glinting and
very brave.
Yeah, and he runs smack into one of the glistening gem-encrusted hooves of the deer that just plants itself smack into his forehead.
Ooh, it takes him out, and the lantern just goes flying back towards the main room. It clatters to the ground. And it's plastic, so it flickers, but then the light comes back dimmer, and that's when you see the long shadows of Big Head start to throw themselves across this girl who's scrambling backwards.
Big Head is continuing to advance on her, his bony digits scraping the ground, swinging this war stocking around. She's sort of scrabbling up, and he then stops and gets his little bony arms that have all the gummy arms and legs sticking out of it and slides them underneath the frozen corpse of the last intruder, lifts it up like some sort of heroic log, and hurls it bodily at the female intruder.
Crashes into her like a lead pipe, just smashes into her and kind of like bowls her over. The body is so frozen that it actually sort of bounces and rolls away after colliding with her.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets knocked silly, but she gets knocked back towards the conveyor belts. And as she thumps into one of them, you hear this and the gears start to turn and cough, and then suddenly the conveyor belt that she's leaning up against starts to and it creaks to life with a groan. And suddenly she's being ferried along the path of the conveyor belt that she was leaning against as it sort of latches onto her.
Coming astride her as she is pulled along on this conveyor, running as if on air with like sparks and glinting light coming off of the jewels on its hooves, the deer just keeps pace and turns to look at her, and its dripping, rotting orb begins to glow like a magma.
She has nowhere to run, so she's being ferried along, surrounded by this scene of complete horror.
Totally. As the ancient works have coughed to life once again, all these little twinkling lights are turning on, like power is being returned to this place. But it's too much, and they're all like shattering and popping and sparking. Conveyor belts are tearing and coughing and squealing with rust, but they're continuing to ferry her forward. These mechanical arms are coming out of the ground and gripping her and packing her into smaller and smaller packages as she's being crushed.
Yeah, and the deer sort of pulls away as another pair of arms takes like a tiny dress and just pulls it down onto her head, covering her face. And then another pair of arms slaps like a wool wig on top of like the crown of her head as the last like package is wrapped around her, and ribbon starts to spool as she spills off of the conveyor belt, and just detritus starts pouring onto her.
Indeed, and she is deposited amongst the piles of wrapped packages at the end of the conveyor belt.
She is neatly packaged in it. The box that she basically now is lands on the ground, kicking snow and dust, and it kind of wobbles twice and just lands still and flat and silent. Beautifully wrapped. Everyone answers one question. The killer or killers may answer two if you wish. And now
we're both killers.
We're both killers.
Yeah, you're both got the assist on the packaging.
So I'll answer my first question. What objects signified your status? Choose from amongst those already introduced if you are able. And I'll note my answer on the map. Within the stables are numbered. 2 blocks of like 4x4, and they're labeled 2 through 8. And then sort of a more freshly built one sits kind of off, like almost breaking the pattern, like it was added as an afterthought. The paint is worn on all of the others. Clearly, they were from an earlier time, and the paint on this one is less worn, and it bears a 1.
What by name did you earn in life that describes your greatest accomplishment? And I am known as Big Head, first builder, head of all builders.
Thus, the biggest head.
The biggest head. Exactly. And I sort of stopped, war stocking still in hand.
My question is, who tended to your needs in life? There's a man named Cornelius. He was brought in sort of as a prospector initially, like he was found, and almost against the rules of no adults allowed. He was allowed to stay and keep the deer maintained and see after their needs. As they were larger animals, he was one of the larger people or larger beings to inhabit this place, this Cornelius.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Is he a part of the tomb at all? Do we know of any?
I don't know.
We don't know
I think,
yet. We don't
I think
know
that
yet.
there's like hung by the stables with like some rotting tack is an old pick, like an old pickaxe, and like a satchel full of like gold and silver nuggets. Again, kind of hanging in this tack. And by that, you can see like there are these leather, it must have been like a pulley system or something that he had put into place, almost like retrofitting mining gear to treat these animals.
Well, so we have something from God's laugh. The entry is something from a skeleton's past has been accidentally revealed.
With this latest incursion, the tomb itself reacts. This chamber opens up over here. Stones slide out of the way, and revealed is a chamber that has stone bookshelves lining it and rotting rotting like leather tomes. Each of the tomes is either in gold, like gold covered, or it's in obsidian black. On the coal colored ones, it reads naughty, and on the gold ones, it reads nice for those that are still intact. But most of them are all rotted.
Like how does it connect to Big Head specifically?
For Big Head, he's realizing that he, at one point, wrote these tomes or drafted them or helped update them.
Oh, why was it hidden?
Because it is forbidden knowledge only for the dweller in the sarcophagus.
Another year passes.
Yeah.
Still 40 seconds. We interrupt our story here, and we'll continue in our next communique. I was one of your players, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Joho and on Instagram at board_ghost. Ken, where can people find you?
Hey, Board Ghost, you can find me, Ken Breese, on Twitter at Burlingsbeard, BERLINGS. I'm a for-hire game master in the New York City area and an RPG content creator. Hire me to run your games.
All right, and Kelsey, where can people find you?
You guys can find me on the web at thearcanelibrary.com, and that's where I put D&D content and some other fun stuff for people who,
Didn't you just have an awesome release? Didn't a product just release of yours?
I did. I just co-wrote a book called The Monsters Lexicon with Matt Rauscher, who's the Pickled Dragon, and it's available on Amazon. It's 71 monsters from our 50-plus combined years of D&D. And it's got 4 playable races for 5th edition as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw one of the races is Minotaurs. I love Minotaurs.
That was
cool.
a fun one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Well, I hope that does really well, and everyone should go check it out for sure on Amazon.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll have a link to that and to all the information here to learn more about the players and engine on our story. Go to boardghost.com. You can pierce the veil and try to contact us at BoardGhostWorld on Twitter. Shout out to the ether if you have desires we can fulfill. You can follow us on iTunes, your preferred listening portal. Take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss out on the latest episodes. And also do us a favor and rate and review. It's really helpful to kind of keep us exposed and help people find the show by that means, but also just tell people about the show. Holidays are coming up. There are plenty of times to get around and play games. So we hopefully can help you guys learn games. Maybe you're traveling and you need something to listen to. Recommend some Board Ghosts. Get some stories in people's ears. All right. You can also follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/boardghost. And we have a Patreon if you'd like to contribute in making the show at patreon.com/boardghost. And we'd like to thank Pat Couples for our theme song and interlude music. You can find more about Pat at patcouples.tumblr.com or on his band's website, hotelsandhighways.com. If you're not alone in the void, share our stories. The more they are consumed, the truer they become.
Dying don't agree with me, no. Dying don't